This conference will now be recorded.
Mayor Zakowski,
Here.
Alderman Kittle,
Here.
Alderman Vries,
Here.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Here.
Alderman Montello,
Here.
Alderman Volkert,
Here.
Alderman Kraft.
Here.
Pledge of Allegiance. Your motion to adopt the agenda with one change, moving board and commissions 8.3 right after the consent agenda. Tom Coop has another thing going on tonight, and I said I'd move this up. If there's any questions for him.
I make a motion, we approve that.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Public comment. Go up there, Marla, please. To the microphone.
Marla.
Any other public comments? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda with exception of move 8.3 to the start of new business.
That's already been done, Tom.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. Okay, we'll go to board and commission appointments. Beth?
Really, I sent out a memo to City Council and I sent out information just in the meeting agenda, basically stating that Mayor Zakowski did want to appoint Tom Coop to the Forward and Richmond group. I had two recommendations. Carrie was one of my recommendations and Tom was the other one. So I'm just going to kind of pass it over to you guys for your approval.
Housing Authority.
Oh, and I also have, I think, is it on the same motion or not? We also have a recommendation for the Housing Authority that I sent out also for Melissa Rott. So two.
Your motion to approve the board and commission appointments.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Do I have a second? Since we don't have a second, there will be no appointments.
Jim, would we be able to do those individually? I do know that the Housing Authority will be meeting, and they wanted to have the new member on there at the next meeting. So is that possible to pull those apart?
I'll offer a motion that we approve Melissa Rott.
I'll second it.
Roll, please.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Yes.
If, for the Ford and Richmond appointment, I have recommended Tom Coop. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? Motion failed for not having a second. Or, I don't know if it's second or not approved, I'm not sure what you do. Anyways, not approved. Continuing business, Resolution 082201, aldermanic voting cycles.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is a continuation. We've discussed this item actually last several months. If you recall, really starting last fall about looking at shifting the alderperson terms from a 2-year position to a 3-year position. So in the outline prepared by our city clerk, just kind of highlight some of the steps we've taken starting this spring, going through the various notifications in the newspaper. Obviously, this is done as a charter ordinance amendment. And so we come this evening really looking at now in terms of which aldermanic districts will be up for election in 2023, 2024, and 2025. And included in your packet, we have 2 different concepts. And the recommendation from staff would be to adopt voting map B. Really felt that this map better addressed future growth and even just visually would be least likely to cause confusion amongst the voters. And so this would have aldermanic districts 1 and 2 up for election in 2023, aldermanic districts 3 and 6 in 2024, and then the districts 4 and 5 in 2025. So if the council was comfortable this evening adopting that, you could entertain a motion to do so. If you want to table that item and kind of have this as a first reading, you can also do that as well.
I would offer a motion that we adopt Resolution 082201B.
I'll second.
Further discussion?
Just out of curiosity, Noah, I know I talked to Michelle about this a little bit last week or the week before, but has there been any education provided to the residents of the city yet at this point, or were we just kind of waiting for approval of the map before we start to
Right,
kind of
that would
send
really
information
start
out?
this fall,
Okay.
especially for those community members who might be interested in running for a position in the future to
Okay.
know when that would be. Because obviously you can start taking out nomination papers later in the year, and we want people to know prior to that. So,
Okay.
yes, up to this point, we haven't started that, but really this evening now, having the maps, we could publish those on our city website and start to let people know.
Okay, thanks.
Other discussion? Want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Kittle,
No.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Passes. Compensation policy. Noah?
Yeah, so this item was discussed by the council at our July 11th meeting, and included in your agenda packet is updated draft policy, just based on some of the feedback that we received from the council since our last meeting. We also had some educational opportunities for city staff just to learn about the policy. So we Earlier this month, had a couple of different presentations over the lunch hour. We recorded those so staff could watch it. We've had some individual meetings with some employees as well, just to walk through individually how the policy would work. So happy to answer any questions that you might have this evening. And again, if you felt comfortable adopting the policy, you could do so. If you wanted to table the item, discuss it again at another date, you could certainly do that as well.
I feel like we've had quite a bit of opportunity to read through, to ask questions, to meet with HR, to meet with you, Noah. So I feel comfortable making a motion to approve the draft compensation policy as presented.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Not, do you want to take the roll, Christie?
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes?
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Passes. Compost site.
Yeah, and we'll have a couple slides up on the screen momentarily. Just as since our last meeting in July, I think as most of you know, Forestry Custom Grinding is no longer operating the compost site, so they wrapped up at the end of July. So for the time being, the site has been closed. That's really for a couple of things. One reason just to give Sylvester time to get their equipment and things out of the site, and also just to make sure that we have adequate time to have staffing in place, make sure we have time to educate the community about what the new days and hours will be. And so this evening wanted to talk about those issues with you. If you want to go to the next slide. So really we're just looking at this time of, what is our plan for the fall? We would be proposing to continue to offer our curbside leaf pickup that's done by city staff for this fall. So that's the bag leaf pickup in the biodegradable bags. We have a job description included in the agenda packet. This would be for a limited position to staff or supervise the site this fall. And we would, if approved by the council, we would already begin advertising for that position right away tomorrow. We've already had a few community members already reach out, which is a good sign who've expressed interest in that position. This site would be open for city residents only at no charge. They would have to bring their photo ID and utility bill. If folks didn't have their utility bill, we'd be able to look up and verify that they're a utility customer. In terms of days and times, and this may be something you may want to discuss this evening, we're proposing a weeknight and then Saturday mornings. So what we're proposing at this time is Tuesdays from 5 to 7, Saturdays from 8 to noon. Our thought here was that, especially as it gets dark a little earlier here in the fall, having that 7 o'clock end time would be appropriate, and that a lot of people aren't home from work until 5:30. But something certainly you can discuss this evening. We would look to reopen the site right after Labor Day. That gives us a couple weeks here to make sure we have staffing in place, make sure we can have signage up there at the compost site, help get the word out on the city Facebook page. And we would have the site open through November 12th. So that's shortly before deer hunting and Thanksgiving time, as we've done in the past.
You mean weather permitting?
Weather permitting, yeah. And then we would revisit plans for 2023 more over the winter months and to see how we'd want to operate the site going forward. So it's really, this is just trying to get us through the next 2.5 months essentially. But obviously if there's other thoughts in terms of days, hours of operation, we can certainly discuss that. And if there's any feedback on the seasonal position, that's also included in your packet. In terms of possible action for this evening, we would be looking at approval of the job description, and then either as laid out here on the screen before you, or any changes that you may want to bring forward. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn the floor back to you.
No, any consideration given to a plan for Christmas trees? I know we've had some discussions.
We've just had some discussions about potentially having a couple of dates where city residents could just bring in their Christmas tree to a designated location rather than having the Public Works Department drive around the city looking for Christmas trees. But something I think we could bring forward at our next meeting for more discussion on that. But obviously, we'd want to let people know before we get into the holidays what the plan is. So if they're thinking about purchasing, cutting a tree down, that they know, or making plans accordingly for how they're going to get rid of it.
Well, I'm going to offer a motion that, that to authorize the job description posting as you've got it laid out, that can take place tomorrow. And that also, this would be referred back to Public Works to come back to us before the work session, the end of August, and tell us, make a recommendation relative to those hours. Now, the three of the 5 members of Public Works are here. If they had a strong opinion about they're good with these hours, then I guess we could go with that. But it seems to me that, honestly, it's so different from what we've had even this year. Forget the last couple of years. I think it'd be good for folks to have a chance to weigh in on that. So I'm just going to rephrase my motion is to approve the job description as you've laid it out there being posted tomorrow, and then referring this to Public Works to give us a recommendation relative to the hours.
How soon do you have to have that posted, though, so people know? I mean, you want this well ahead of time, though, too. Because
Yeah.
the work session's on, what, the 25th?
Let me
Very
look
nice.
here.
Mayor, we have a motion on the floor. I believe we need to determine if there's
Yeah, I'll second Mike's motion.
Yeah, so the work session is on August 29th.
Yeah,
So
I think we should.
it would just depend
hours,
how
if everybody's
quickly we'd
good
want to
with the hours
reopen.
right now, because the 29th in 2 days, we're gonna open it up, or, the next week, and people aren't gonna know.
Well, I'll tell you this, what my thought is, you can go ahead and post this, but maybe they want to open it more. That's all.
Sure.
So I think at a minimum, that you're going to have these hours to answer the mayor's question. And, but is it enough? I don't know. But I think that Public Works can make a recommendation relative to that.
And we, and Chrissy, if you were to go to the next slide, actually, just for a little bit, and we can certainly show this to Public Works. This again was just looking at how many hours some of the other sites. But again, to Alderman Mantello's point, this was kind of that transition year where we're going from, 52 hours to, significantly reduced. So, but River Falls is open 12 hours a week, and then Baldwin and Altoona 4 and 3 hours respectively. River Falls does not offer the curbside pickup, so in the fall, you have a lot of residents just bringing bag leaves and things there too. But something that certainly the committee can discuss.
I think something they should be discussing, addition to that, whether that happens within the next 2 weeks or not, is the whole concept of compost, recycling, clean sweep. Are there things we can be doing to address the needs of the things folks want to get rid of? It's interesting, Noah, and I know this just because you've told me, but that where it says no under Hudson, the city of Hudson does not have a compost site. So if I understand correctly, if you live there, the only way you can get rid of leaves and lawn debris and branches is you have to pay Waste Management, and you get a roll-off cart and you get to fill that.
Yes.
Or whatever, and that's how your stuff gets taken away.
Yeah, unless you took it to a private,
Right, but
Roberts or.
the city of Hudson does not have a site. So if you pay any attention to social media over the last number of weeks and kind of listening to the angst expressed by folks relative to what's happened at our compost site, I think the important point is people need to understand we are trying to come up with something that works on into the future. Not, well, here's a plan, next year it's going to be different. And obviously it has to be less than it was because we have to staff it. And that's going to be a big change relative to the way it was last year and the preceding number of years. We cannot have it open without somebody there. I think it's super important. I don't know if you mentioned it. Maybe you did and I couldn't hear you very well. But when folks come out to the compost site, they're going to have a photo ID and a utility bill.
Yes.
Stickers are gone, and people need to understand that. I can imagine the communication part is really hard. Folks are going to show up and say, hey, here's my sticker. That's not the deal. And I actually think if there was a way for us to put some signage out there that communicated that the compost site is set to reopen, whatever that Tuesday is after Labor Day, I mean, and maybe, but that it's scheduled to open then, and that here's going to be the requirements. I think part of the difficulty that was expressed to us by the folks who were working out there is just people who were used to doing things one way and then it was something different, and that just made it hard. And change is tough. So, but I think relative to the issue of, the city hasn't had a drop-off recycling spot for a number of years now, clean sweep. I know we've talked about a number of things that we should be talking about for this community. And I will say this, I feel bad for our township neighbors because there's no question, and it's not just city residents, but a lot of times when people want to get rid of something and they don't have a place to take it, they drive out in the country and throw it in the ditch. It's awful, but that's what happens. And just us having a place where they can take it, I know doesn't guarantee it's going to end up there. Because I would say people really like a place they can take it for free. But that's kind of the challenge. But it's super important to get the message out there what the city is trying to do, because those folks who are complaining about the compost site now being closed really don't have any idea why, just because they're not reading the stuff as to why we have to put the restrictions in that we do. So I think the more messaging we can do, including a sign out there, would be great. Because some folks don't pay attention and then they drive out there and it's like, what's going on? So.
Mike, I'll agree with you. I think the signage out at the site will help a lot. I think other places. I'm okay with the hours that are currently listed here. Overworked and can't get everybody in.
And I'll say this, Pete, I think the thing that's important for folks who use the compost site, it wasn't just, okay, somebody said we're going to go to 6 hours a week. It was
Unlimited.
52, well, unlimited last year, but 52 just previously, as of up to the end of July.
Yep.
And so that at least we can say, hey, we're asking for feedback sometime in the next 2 weeks. And we just want to know if there is something that, if something needs to be more than, and I'm not so concerned about getting overrun, which I think there'll be plenty of business, but I am concerned for any individual who would say, I just can't make either of those times work. And I'm not suggesting we need to open it more, but I just think that it would be good if Public Works could make a recommendation. And maybe it will be exactly what we got. I just don't think it hurts to say, we had this, we solicited feedback, to come back to the council at the work session.
Noah, about how much more is it going to cost us to take and have someone sitting out there all the time?
Yeah, so we would plan to, for the position, we would advertise $18 to $22 an hour. The staff that were out there previously, the Sylvester employees, were $25, $26 an hour. So we understand it's evening and weekends, and it can be difficult to find people at times, especially if you're asking them to commit every Saturday morning to working. So we may have to hire, 3 or 4 employees, not that you're going to have 3 or 4 people out there at one time, but just to make sure that when we say we're going to be open, we're going to be open. So there is obviously cost for having the staff out there. The biggest cost will be, we'll have to solicit quotes this fall for the grinding and removal of all that material, where previously Sylvester was doing that as part of their lease. So we will have to solicit quotes later this fall, and they made a dent out there with removing some of the material, but there's already quite a lot out there. And so now we would hope that in the fall, with it just being city residents, it wouldn't get quite as full, but that could still very easily be $20,000 just to grind up and remove that material.
I will say, I think Sylvester's done a nice job with cleaning up the site from the last time. Pushing brush back and stuff, so I think they've
Yeah.
Call for the question?
So we're not going to talk about the hours now, or
Public Works
So-
will.
it's going to go to a Public Works meeting? Okay. Or just,
At a minimum, the hours have a chance for people to make some.
I just want to make sure that
At a
the
minimum,
motion
those
is
hours, yes,
what we're
it
talking
includes
about.
those hours.
So we're including those hours in, okay. Okay, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert.
Motion passes. New business, sanitary sewer televising.
So the items 8.1 and 8.2 both went to the Utility Commission at their last meeting. This first item, we budget every year as part of our operating budget to televise sanitary sewer throughout the city. The Utility Commission reviewed this on August 3rd. They recommended accepting the low bid from Flow Right on the amount of 60 cents per lineal foot and $30 per manhole for a total of $27,000. The Utility Commission also discussed looking at the 2023 budget for the utilities, looking at the possibility of purchasing some of our own equipment, perhaps even sharing equipment with another municipality. So that is something that we'll be reviewing this fall to see if that's something that city staff could do in-house and would hopefully have a fairly quick return on the investment. But the recommendation at this point for this year for the sanitary sewer televising would be the low bid in the amount of $27,000.
Hey, can you tell us what channel that's going to be on?
I make a motion to accept the flow right in the amount of 60 cents per lineal foot.
I'll second it.
Second. Any further discussion? Want to take the roll, Christie?
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Motion passes. Manhole rehab.
So like I mentioned, this item also went to the Utility Commission. In this case, there were 2 bids received. The Utility Commission is actually recommending, in this case, what would actually be the higher bid. This isn't quite an apples-to-apples comparison in terms of the services that are provided. In this case, the company with the high bid is actually proposing rebuilding. Essentially, you build a new manhole within the existing manhole, where the other company is basically looking at applying a sealant, which doesn't last as long. So really looking at, essentially having a brand new structure that lasts 40 years versus putting on a sealant that may last 10 to 20 years. So we felt it was, even though in this case it is the higher bid, that it was a worthwhile investment. So
Make a motion that we approve the Utility Commission recommendation with a bid from HydroClean in the amount of $72,810 for manhole rehab.
Second.
Any further discussion? Not. Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier.
Yes.
Motion passes. Annexation petition, Jerome Faribault Farms.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight before you, we have an annexation petition from Genio Turkey and Jerome Farms for annexing approximately 199.5 acres of land into the city of New Richmond. The process that we do for annexation is we receive the annexation petition. We publish it in the newspaper. We send a notice to surrounding property owners within 100 feet. We send information to the state and the township, which in this case is Richmond Township. We have the public hearing at the Plan Commission meeting, which we did on August 2nd, and we bring it here to the City Council for final approval. So what we're looking at up on the screen there is the annexation petition for 6 parcels of land. It is on the southwestern quadrant of the city of Richmond, right to the south of Willow River Bluffs. Currently, it is in the township of Richmond with a general zoning of rural residential. When we look at our comprehensive plan, it guides the future for low-density residential, parks, and open spaces. So what we would like to do and what the Planning Commission and DRC's recommendation is to annex the entire 6 parcels in, the 2 northern parcels being zoned as Z2, which is single and 2-family residence, and the rest of the parcels coming in at a Z1, which is ag zoning. Then when the developer gets a really good concept plan of the bottom parcels to the south, they would bring that forward with an annexation change at that time. We just know that their plan for now, for the top portion of that or the northern portion, is single-family homes and townhomes.
Beth, does this encompass all the turkey barns?
It does. And both, everything on, I would say the north side of A and the south side of A. So everything that Hormel, Jennie-O, Jerome Foods owns.
Are you aware, this is kind of off topic, but are you aware that if, in fact, all the turkey barns are done, like whatever birds are, wherever that is, are they, do we know?
I think they're gone. Is that correct,
They've been
Christine?
gone.
Yep, they
They've been
are
gone for quite a
completely
while.
gone.
Right. And then, is it, and I know the recommendation from the Development Review Committee is to waive the city fees? Is that?
The city and state fees. So
That-
over the past 4 to 5 years, that's what we're going to recommend. Over the past 4 to 5 years, the city council has made kind of an internal policy of waiving fees to encourage annexation. We would request that same for this.
And I'm going to offer a motion that we approve the annexation request from Jerome Faribault Farms as it's been laid out here.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion, any questions? Not, Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft.
Yes.
Passes. Next item is ETJ CSM application 1075 185th Avenue.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an application for an ETJ CSM from the Colbecks, who are in the Start Prairie Boundary Agreement. So how we look at this ETJ, as you know in the past, we don't have a lot of jurisdiction over it. We look at access, we look at utilities, we look at how far it is from the city. Now we go out in a buffer of 3 miles. So this is out a little ways. We looked at this parcel. Really what they're doing is they are dividing the current lot into 2 parcels. They're sharing the driveway. We're requiring an access agreement to be recorded with that shared driveway. And they're actually selling to somebody within their family, so it doesn't trigger the Start Prairie Boundary Agreement. So they're allowed to keep it in the township at this point. So if in fact they were to sell that parcel off, they would then have to someone outside the family, they would then trigger the boundary agreement, and they would have to be attached, as we call it, to the city, similar to an annexation process. At this point, we're asking for approval of the ETJ CSM as is. I think we have one requirement of an access easement being recorded.
I would offer a motion that we approve the ETJ CSM application as presented with the one requirement.
Go second.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Not, Christie, take the roll, please.
Alderman Vries,
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item, 8.6, second quarter 22 financial report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet should be the second quarter 2022 financial report. And then as we get the slides up here, if you could go up, Christy. I think you're going down. Right there.
Okay, there we go.
All right, so to start off, this first slide is just kind of a quick overview of our revenues and expenditures through second quarter. I will go into more detail of those variances for the revenues and expenditures in upcoming slides here. But so far to date, revenues have been about a little under $4 million or 53% of budget. Some notable revenue aspects so far is the decrease in intergovernmental revenue from prior year, mostly due to the receipt of the ARPA funds in 2021. And then our building permits did rebound compared to first quarter there, and they also are up compared to prior year at the same time. And then also for our revenues, our miscellaneous revenues are below budget so far year to date. Total expenditures year to date is about $3.7 million, or about 49% of budget. Some notable expenditures include an unfavorable variance in the miscellaneous expense line there, increase in our computer expenses and our networking there, and then an increase in our library expenses from prior year. So on the screen now is our revenue breakdown by classification. Again, as I mentioned before, revenues landed at a little under $4 million there, which is slightly under revenues from the same time prior year, but they are tracking in line with budget year to date so far. As mentioned before, intergovernmental revenue is experiencing a large variance compared to prior year, but that is in track with budget so far year to date. The main reason for this variance compared to prior year is that in 2021, we did receive those ARPA funds, about $492,000 there. This was originally placed under the Intergovernmental Revenue Fund, but later, with accounting standards, it was required to separate out those funds. So on the expense side, we do see that as a transfer out later on in the upcoming slide here. But that was a pretty big variance compared to prior year budgets for the intergovernmental fund there. The second area that I want to bring your attention to is the building permits and inspection fees, which constitutes majority of the regulation and compliance category there. These revenues did rebound significantly from first quarter. And then for second quarter so far, they have landed at about $198,000, which is above prior year by about 28%. So that's really good to see there. And then, as I mentioned before, we did anticipate this increase from first quarter to second quarter based on the number of permits and everything that was out there. Finally, for our revenue, miscellaneous revenues were below prior year just due to the volatility in the current markets and our current market conditions and everything there. And then also this year, there was prior year there was incoming revenue from the Double G property that hit the miscellaneous line there. So without that sale there is that variance again this year. And then just our miscellaneous line item there, it does fluctuate from year to year, just depending on such aspects such as land sales, insurance recoveries, and then one-time source incomes there as well. For expenditures, they landed second quarter at about $3.7 million there, which is under budget from prior year. However, we are tracking once again close with budget there. The largest variance for second quarter compared to prior year is once again just that ARPA fund that we received last year. And then other notable variances include the general government, which is showing an unfavorable variance to budget. Mostly this is a driver behind the $23,000 of council miscellaneous expense for the raise expenses associated with the 707 East 6th Street property. But there was a lien that was taken out on that, so in hope to recover some of those expenses there. And then also regarding that line item there have been additional legal expenses associated with employment matters. So that associated to about a $44,000 increase from budget. And then also library expenditures did see a slight increase from prior year, mostly associated with additional purchases of materials. And then there was an increase in catalog service expenses, but that was anticipated in budget. So nothing too concerning there. And then another kind of larger call out here is just as a reminder, the budget amount for the taxi services represents the city's share of it, whereas the year-to-date expenditures will reflect the total cost. Next, we'll go into the fire department revenues here. Revenues through second quarter were about $586,000. This is above prior year, mostly due to the pension proceeds of $327,000 that were received from the closure of the length of service program, as mentioned previously. And then those actually were paid out in April of 2022, so we will be seeing those as an expense on the upcoming slide here. And then for the fire department, their expenditures totaled $537,581. The benefits expense line is over budget just due to those pension funds being paid out there. And then another call out here is regarding the vehicle maintenance and fuel, which is above budget and prior year by quite a bit there. The main reason behind this is there was just quite a few repairs that had been pushed off in the past, and the fire department truly decided to tackle them this year. And so with doing that, they anticipate to better maintain a maintenance cycle there, and then also hopefully by maintaining that cycle, the expenses will level out in the future. But without those pension funds hitting this expense, or expenditures, they would be trending about 33% of budget. So we can see that that does tackle or take on a lot of that expenditure line items there. And then the last slide that I have here today is just going over the general obligation debt, which is a majority review of what Rayanne covered in our last financial review. However, I do want to make the call out, or just an update, that through June 30th, we had about $734,000 in principal and interest payments. Any questions on financials through second quarter?
No, she actually only said that to Mike.
Right. Well, thank you for that
Thank you.
presentation.
Lexi, great job.
No questions at all, then? You're free.
Let me off easy this time.
Next item, 8.7, Fire Department compensation.
Yeah, and Christie, there'll be one PowerPoint slide on this as well. This was attachment I'd emailed out to the City Council earlier this week, something that we've looked at over the last few months as we have made several changes at the fire department over the past year. One topic we've looked at is compensation. How do we make sure that we can recruit and retain high-quality firefighters? And there's always been a source of confusion, and as we've in terms of what firefighters are being paid, what they are being paid for. And we've looked at other neighboring communities, how they compensate their firefighters. And before you is the table that we are proposing. And really this is based on years of service with the fire department, as well as their actual position. So whether they be a probationary firefighter, a non-probationary firefighter, an operator, or an officer. The most noticeable change is actually just the starting pay for a new probationary firefighter. Currently, our probationary firefighters for their first 2 years receive $10 per hour. That hasn't been adjusted in over a decade. And so looking at increasing that from $10 to $14. And then also clarifying what the officer stipends are. So we have, again, just based on their job description and their position, assistant chief, captain, and lieutenant with increasing amounts with rank. Compensation for our fire inspectors. We currently have several fire inspectors who were appointed earlier this year. So we felt appropriate as we're looking at compensation to also clarify what they are receiving, which is $20 per hour. And then an additional compensation that we'd be looking at is we hope to revamp and restart our Explorer program this fall, which for a lot of communities, this is kind of a feeder program, if you will, to help get high school students interested in becoming a firefighter, and recognizing that that may start at the beginning of the school year here. That's additional time that those firefighters who are helping lead that program would be putting into not just the actual meeting time with the students, but in preparation for those meetings and trainings. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Oh, so other than the probationary firefighters, the percentage of change for the other categories is pretty minor.
It is, yeah.
And I think it's important to note that while I don't know how many hours the average firefighter puts in a given month with training and everything, they do not get compensated for all of those hours.
Correct.
As people look at that chart, it's incredible and super appreciated that people are willing to get up in the middle of the night, the middle of the dinner, whatever the case may be, and respond to provide fire and rescue services in our community. And they don't even get, the bottom line is the pay actually isn't that per hour when you factor in the time they don't get paid for. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve this proposed pay schedule for the New Richmond Fire Department.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Not, Christie, take the roll, please.
Alderman Weinmeier,
Yes.
Alderman Montello,
Yes.
Alderman Volkert,
Yes.
Alderman Kraft,
Yes.
Alderman Kittle,
Yes.
Alderman Vries.
Yes.
Next item, pre-sale report and initial resolution for 1.2 million general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2022A, and initial resolution for 483,000 general obligation promissory note, Series 2022B. Be or not to be.
We have Sean Lenz here from Ellers and looking at how we'll be paying for this year's capital projects. So, Sean, I'll turn things over to you.
Like to do debt issues. Obviously, there's no Sorry about that.
So repeat that again.
Yeah, start all over, okay. Great, no, thank you. So what we've got for your review tonight is two debt issues based on state authorization. We have a bond issue that's for longer-term assets of the city, so that's streets, parks, parking lots, and what was the fourth one, Josh? Stormwater. Yes, stormwater. And then we have a shorter issue that is for equipment that has a much shorter useful life. And we don't want to be financing projects that have a useful life of 3 years and paying it back over 10, anything like that. So when we've looked at the financing, and now I'll get to the chart, what we've been looking at and working with the finance staff on, the green bars are representative of the existing debt that the city has outstanding right now. And this is the principal and interest payments each year that are the responsibility of your debt levy through your general fund. The actual payments each year of all the debt the city has are higher, but not all of it's paid by your levy. You've got tax increment districts, utilities, golf course, different funding sources that pay a portion of the city's debt. Then in blue is the proposed impact of the new debt that the council is considering tonight, beginning the process for. And that is the $1.2 million general obligation bond issue that would be paid back over a 15-year period, full amortization over 15 years. And then the $483,000 promissory note issue, and that's again for the shorter useful life assets, and that's going to be paid back over a 5-year period, okay? And then finally, the purple bars is representative of the 2023 through 2027 capital improvement plan that I think the city's been working on. So ongoing streets and other types of projects that you have into that plan. And what Rayanne asked us to model is financing approximately $2 million a year to cover those projects. Now, you may use other funding sources, but the new debt issued, the purple, is representative of a $2 million borrowing paid back over a 15-year term. And I may have mentioned this to the council before, but you have in recent years paid back bond issues in a 15-year term. The maximum term under state law for a general obligation bond issue is 20 years. So you've been paying them back over a shorter than maximum term that you could. Finally, the line, and here's where we kind of bring everything together, the lighter blue kind of turquoise line, that is a target annual payment amount for the general fund debt levy from 2023 through 2028 of about 1.6 million in principal and interest payments that would be a part of your general fund budget to pay back debt each year, looking at it long term. So just to review, with your existing debt, this new debt proposed this year, and on an ongoing basis, doing about 2 million a year for 23 through 27's projects, 2 million financed, paid back over 15 years. That's the purple bars. We're projecting we can stay at the targeted amount, and this is Rayanne's discussion with us, of about 1.6 million a year. But I will highlight this also for the council. You'll see when we get to 2028 into 29 that the purple bar is a little bit below that turquoise line. But if we continue to do 2 million a year beyond 2027, so if we did 2 million again in 2028, we'd have to increase that above that 1.6 million. So we can't do the 1.6 in perpetuity. At some point, if we're going to continue to do $2 million a year in financing for capital projects, the total levy of the city will likely have to go up above the 1.6 million target. Next 5 years approximately, we believe that's doable, but beyond that, it would not work within the finance plan.
Christy, can you make the graph bigger? My old eyes can't read.
We've got
I
a,
want to ask you, the levy target, how does that compare to what we got going right now?
yeah, right for this year, and I've got the numbers here. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on for this.
Probably see behind you better, Sean.
Yeah, yes, this tiny number chart here, your debt levy for this year is right around 1.43 million, 1,430,000. That's what's in the budget, I think, for this year, levy in 21, payable 22.
Just as a point of clarification, I think, Lexi, you talked about principal and interest payments that the city is liable for right now are more than that. So we have some debt repayment that's coming from somewheres other than the levy.
That's absolutely right, Mike. It's the list, there's a number of funding sources. I think your tax increment districts are the biggest other funding sources, and the utilities. I know the council assisted the golf course with an irrigation process. They pay, the golf course generates revenues and they pay their share. So that's right. The difference between the number that Lexi talked about and the 1.4, next year 1.6, that's debt paid by other funding sources than the tax levy.
So just based on the levy, right now, there's going to be an increase of about $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Roughly.
It's just under that, right?
Okay.
Yep.
That will be the increase for this debt that we're incurring at this time.
Yes, the way it's structured with that blue bar on 2023 jumping above the green, where that's debt you've already committed to as a city, that's right. That's taking you up to that targeted amount of 1.6, should the council be comfortable with that. Can we go to the next? So one other item I wanted to share with you, just we see debt looked at from a number of different perspectives, just like your operating budget would be. This chart is exactly the same as the previous chart. The only difference is we've added the red line, and the red line is representative of the mill rate for debt if the city grows at a 3% value year over year. So a constant growth of 3%. And if we could scroll to the bottom, I think we put the average that the city has been growing at over the last, since 2018, last 5 years. So you've been growing at about 10%, and that's not all new construction, so that's a combination of inflation, new construction, potentially tax increment districts closing, and, you know, and they're not in the captured tax base coming back. So if you continue to grow at a 3% rate and the levy stays the same at that 1.6 million to pay debt back, you're going to see a drop in that mill rate from about $1.40 for every $1,000 of valuation, a property valuation, out over the term. I wouldn't look at all the way to 2032, but if you look at to like 2027, you're probably down in about the 115 range there. So depending on the growth of the city, the mill rate for debt could drop. Some targets rather than, some communities choose to target more of a mill rate rather than the actual dollar levy, but that's a policy decision. That's up to the council as to what you feel is the best fit for the city and getting the projects that you feel are necessary to get financed.
Out of curiosity, why isn't it more of a straight line?
It's that 3% growth.
No, I'm sorry. What I mean is it's not straight down. We have a couple of extra bumps. I actually was wondering if the first bump had to do with TID districts coming back on.
You got it, Mike.
So
Yep, that's right.
you have factored in, or the other TID districts coming in like 2029, I think. Is that what I'm looking? I think so. 2029, you've got another bump. So that's the benefit of growth.
The first TID number 5, you guys are benefiting in this year's budget from that. And then 6 and 8, I think, come off next year, Josh, right? So that's right. That's why you're seeing it. It's not just a straight line like you mentioned. There are some extra dips in there. It's the benefit of those TIDs closing. Correct. Okay.
By the way, do you know what the city has averaged in the last period of time for growth in the mill rate?
The mill rate or the?
Well, just valuation, sorry. So you talk about 3%. You're using that as a guide going forward. Historically, over the last 5 years, which has been really good for the last 15 years. But when people hear that 3% number, okay, so are you being conservative? Knowing you, I know you're being conservative, but let's put that into context with what the city's recent history has been.
Yeah, you guys have had really, and this last year was spectacular growth.
And I heard our valuation now is, assessed valuation is 1.3 billion.
Yeah, it's equalized assessed right around high 1.2 to 1.3 billion in value. Yep.
Sean, the secret to that is because we televise the sewer system. That's must-see TV. People want to live here.
Well, authorization-wise, what the timeline we are working under from Rayanne's direction would be tonight. There's a couple of initial resolutions for the bonds, and that's a requirement of the statutory process to issue the bonds. So you have a couple of steps to get the bond issuance process going, and then the plan is at your. It's not your normal council meeting in September, but your later in the month meeting. Work session. Thank you. The morning of that session, we'll have the bids collected and we'll bring them for your review that evening. And then if the bids come in and you're comfortable with those, we would accept those bids and go forward with the closing. But that first step tonight, I think there's a series of 5 or so, 6 initial resolutions that need to get approved to get that process.
That's
started.
just for the 1.2, and then there's a separate one for the 483.
Right. The bond issuance process is.
We need to do those all individually.
You got to do them individually, correct?
So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the initial resolution authorizing 35,000 general obligation bonds for sewerage projects.
Second.
Further discussion? Christie, you want to take the roll?
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Resolution passes. Next is 082204 for the street bonding.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve the initial resolution authorizing $695,000 general obligation bonds for street improvement projects.
Second.
Discussion? Christie, take the roll.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle? Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Resolution 082205 for parking lot, 225,000 general obligation bond.
I'll make a motion to approve that initial resolution authorization.
I'll second it.
Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Motion passes. Resolution 082206 for parks, for 245,000 general obligation bond.
I'll make a motion that we approve the initial resolution authorizing 245,000 general obligation bonds for parks and public grounds projects.
I'll second it.
Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Passes. Resolution 082207, bonds for directing publication for,
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution directing publication of notice to electors relating to bond issues.
I'll second that. Gotcha.
Ron woke up.
Ron second that?
Yeah.
Oh, Ron got it. Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Resolution 082208, for 2022's sale GO bonds.
Make a motion, we approve the resolution providing for the sale of not to exceed $1.2 million in general obligation corporate purpose bond series 2022A.
I'll second that.
Ron, you blew your chance.
He was very kind. He looked to me first.
Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert?
Yes.
Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Passes. Communication and miscellaneous.
Oh, we have the other one to do.
Yeah, we have one more.
I'm going to make a motion that we approve the resolution authorizing $483,000 in general obligation promissory notes series 2022B.
I'll second it.
Christie, you want to take the roll, please?
Alderman Volkert? Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Passes. Any communication or miscellaneous?
I just wanted to thank the staff and all the poll workers who helped out with the election recently. We had very steady turnout throughout the day. Everything went really smoothly. So, and then just a reminder, we have a couple board and commission meetings later this week. Tomorrow is Public Safety Committee, and then Wednesday is Ford and Richmond. So that's all I have.
Did the primary, average turnout for primary, was it light or heavy?
I think actually it was very similar to our last one. I don't know if you recall, Christie had the actual number, but I think very comparable to previous
It was
years.
average for a primary.
It was steady all day compared to other primaries. We had 400 absentee voters and, let me pull up that report, just over 1,000, I think, that came in person to vote.
So, yeah, anecdotally, that we had more traffic than normal. What we've seen, we had higher turnout than what we've seen in the past. for that
Correct.
Type of election.
I guess Wisconsin had like 26%, which was really high compared to other ones. It was okay. Anything else for communication miscellaneous?
Are we, I just, my calendar, we were encouraged to show up here tomorrow for this two-factor authentication deal.
Oh, yes, so there will be, you should have received an email from Kyle Wells. So we do have, this is basically if you're accessing your email for the first time or using maybe a new device that you haven't logged in before, you would get a prompt asking you to, you would most likely get a text message with a code. Basically another step of security. This isn't something you'd have to do every single time you check into your email, but we will have help available tomorrow if anyone is interested in helping get that set up on your device. So just reach out. I'll put you down, Tom, and we can make sure you get set up. So
Right after 9:30, somebody could come down.
yes, yep.
And so in the morning, if you get your city emails on your phone,
Yeah, so the very first time, everyone will have to set up that authentication, but then going forward after tomorrow, you wouldn't have to do that every single time you log in. But starting tomorrow, you're gonna receive a prompt.
Us, or are we gonna need some help?
You'll get a prompt right away. Yep.
Okay, just to note, Michelle has corrected me. It was the same amount of people, but felt busier. There we go.
Just curious how you're gonna report that, Tom.
I just want to thank Eilers for being here tonight and appreciate all the work you've put into this. Complicated for some of us.
Okay, if nothing else, hear a motion to go in closed session per Wisconsin Statute 19.851E, and it's for library building project.
Make motion, we go into closed session.
Second.
Want to take the roll, please, Christie?
Alderman Montello?
Yes.
Alderman Volkert? Yes. Alderman Kraft?
Yes.
Alderman Kittle?
Yes.
Alderman Vries?
Yes.
Alderman Weinmeier?
Yes.
Motion passes. Anybody need a little break first?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah.
You have 3.